everyone, and welcome to Thursday Nighter Round 1 for the month of April. I am Michael Perry, and I am pleased to be joined by National Master OK.
Well,
Before we get started, I just wanted to shout out our winners from the Stenberg Cup from just this last weekend. In the premier section, we had Sam Rugg, I believe, three-time defending champion. There's some tiebreaks in there with Nagel, but he tied this year with Charles Hua, who is a national master from New York. So those guys will be playing a playoff. I don't know when, but in the foreseeable future, they will play a playoff. They tied on 3.5, so pretty exciting there. And then the expert section, we did have, I believe, a solo winner, and that was, why is it not loading for me? Irene, right? Yep, Irene Faye. She
yes.
finished with 4 out of 5. And then second place, there was Dane and Aaron. But so congrats to Irene on winning the expert section, and also congrats because she now is national master. I believe she crossed 2200 a couple tournaments ago, even though she also crossed 2200 this tournament. And then the amateur section, we had Paulo Soto, who had 4.5 out of 5, so very dominant fashion there. And then in the reserve section, we had Charlie Dole, a player I'm not familiar with, but someone who I'd probably be familiar with in the future. He also got 4.5 out of 5. So congrats to all of our winners. And yeah, definitely a huge achievement to win the most prestigious tournament in the state. And then just this weekend at the castle, we had the Easter Tornado. It's 4 rounds of game 45 plus 15. Jacob Pikus will be the TD for that one. Excuse me. And then alongside that, we have the Chess Castle Championship Playoff, which will be participated in by me and the other commentator, OK, and then Jordan Tim and Yusuf Khan. So if you want to spectate that, you can, and that's kind of written about on the Castle main page. But I think that's it for announcements, and I'll send it over to OK.
Okay. I'll add to the announcement. So at this moment, it appears the playoff between Samrug and Charles will be played on the 11th of April at the castle. So that's
okay.
Yes.
Because Chris was just saying in the YouTube chat, he said the playoff is April 8th. So
April 8th? Oh.
That's what he said, yeah.
Okay. That's
so April 8th would
me.
be today's a Thursday, obviously, so April 8th would be a Wednesday.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. Well, he knows, he's more in tune with it than I am. But the last thing I saw was some discussion of it being on the 11th. But
oh no, you're right. He said he misspoke. Yeah, so it's April 11th, Saturday.
Okay.
Which makes sense. Always on a weekend.
Yes, because I think we're going to hold it alongside one of the Scholastic level tournaments, like Denker or something, probably.
That makes sense.
All right, well, let's get into the games. So we'll start off with some of the completed games in the premier section. And we'll go with Matthew Krusak versus Jordan Tim, who doesn't seem to ever be tired of chess. He played a tournament he played at a closed championship last weekend and is here fighting again. So they get into what looks like a semi-Slav for the moment. And then Jordan plays Queen A5, which I believe he essayed last weekend too. Or something similar. Maybe it was a sort of hybrid. And here, this isn't the most common. I think if Black is willing to play the bishop at this moment, it might more commonly go to b4. And I think another approach might be d takes e4, and then knight d5, putting pressure on the knight on d5. Well, this is okay, it looks like. And so continue with normal development. Now everybody's got their minor pieces developed. Maybe White's minor pieces are a bit more active, but Black doesn't have any weaknesses at the moment. And until this moment, when now h7 is targeted, and c5. So this is always a double-edged decision, move like this. Especially if the opponent is able to attack the base of the pawn chain immediately, which Jordan does with e5. And so if white had gone here, then potentially there's either queen takes c5 or bishop takes c5. Probably bishop takes e5, allowing the queen to come back here to attack here. But either way, white often doesn't want to give up the tension in the center and leave his pawn split like that. So he plays bishop h6, h7, king h8, and bishop f5, with the idea of exchanging off bishops. So now black no longer has the bishop pair, but his bishop on d7 wasn't exactly a fireball activity anyway, right? So both sides are probably happy. And now we see another part of the downside of this pawn structure for black is that, sorry, for white, his d4 pawn is now a target. And he has just the right piece to target the pawn with queen with bishop f6. So let me do this here. And so rook a e8, rook fe1, and queen b4. So putting pressure on the d pawn as well as the b2 pawn. It's not clear the b2 pawn is truly a target just because capturing on b2 might have to deal with a rook b1, then taking the pawn on b7, and rook e4. So black is piling the pressure on d4, and his move actually, so he's putting pressure on d4, but he's also prepared for doubling on the e file. And all of a sudden, white's position is not looking comfortable. Well, maybe it's not all of a sudden. It's been seemingly it was already getting under pressure, but it's not clear how he defends here. So, for example, if the knight moves, then the d pawn hangs. But the knight really, yeah.
It looks like you have to move the queen back, or you're losing a pawn immediately, right?
Yes. Or you could try this, which seems like it delays the crisis for a moment, but maybe it just increases the crisis, because now if the rooks get exchanged off, for example, the a4 pawn is another target for black. And this one seemed like it made some sense, but white is trying to generate some play. And it's unclear. Why do you think he didn't capture on b7?
Maybe he didn't want to lose d4, and he felt like black would just be too aggressive.
That makes sense. And on the other hand, Jordan declines taking the a4 pawn because he doesn't want to give, white undeserved activity, probably because maybe his queen has a hard time escaping that thing alive after queen takes a4.
That's like he's already up a pawn. What's important now is just keeping up the pressure and making sure White's pieces are tied down. And Black's always going to be better because he just has a target on d4 that White's knight has to guard.
Yeah, yeah, and this is it's an important theme. I don't know. Some people refer to it as delayed gratification. I guess keeping control of the position. I don't know, not giving up your birthright for a mess of pottage, whatever. There's no, you already have a material advantage and control of the position. Don't give up your assets for some nebulous extra pawn that could come back to bite you. And so White has pushed the rook off of the pressure against d4, but on the negative side of that, e3 has been weakened, and that could be an issue later. And I think that's a blunder. Well, maybe not a blunder, actually. He was probably going to have to lose something. I don't think he can defend the a pawn and keep the opponent's rook out of e2.
Yeah.
So he counters there, but now Jordan's able to take on a4 and put pressure against d4. And there's a small tactic here already, right? Because bishop d4 is immediately threatened, winning a pawn based on overworking and stuff like that. So Matthew tries h4, but there's no, that really doesn't address bishop takes d4. And the idea being, well, it's a check, and so White has to address that. And either capture on d4, you have to deal with the rook on e1 being under defended.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's interesting. He could have taken on c5, but he chooses not to give White any undeserved counterplay.
Yeah, which makes sense.
This is the cleanup period. So yeah, that was actually fairly, I wouldn't say easy at all, but somewhat one-sided, and I don't know.
Really that c5 move for Matthew was just a bit too weakening, at least what it
Yes,
seemed. What move was that? I think it was like,
it was here, move
yeah, so
13.
move 13. You have to be really careful when you're when you're gonna lock the position up like that, and you have to be cautious of exactly what Jordan did, which is e5. Maybe he didn't consider e5 because he just thought, oh, it's a free pawn, and like if you look at it for more than like 5 seconds, you see that, oh, it's a playable move, but the mind, it can become like a mental block, and well, as soon as you see it, then you're like, oh wait, that's actually a problem. So I'm guessing he just didn't see e5 for black, and he's like, oh, I don't know, I'm making black Stark squid bishop bad, maybe is what he thought, but really black
Mm-hmm.
Stark squid bishop becomes somewhat of
A
a
beast.
menace, and yeah, beast and white's pieces are just inferior. So if he would have left the tension, I think the position is pretty equal, and black has this light squid bishop on d7 that's not so hot. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, a3 comes to mind as a possibility. Maybe even knight. Maybe even switching the knight over to the king side. maybe f4. Yeah, if you I don't know. I mean, it looks a bit weakening, but if you played f4 with the idea of following up with c5, at least you prevent white from getting that counterplay. Sorry, black from getting the counterplay that he got in the game. But the problem with a move like f4 here is this is a bit of a weakness. This might be an issue, and so you have to assess the consequences carefully before making that move because the pawns can't move backwards.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's see what's going on, what happened in board 2 game between Dane Zagar and Krish Mahajan. We have a quiz gambit declined. Knight bd7 immediately. So now we're going into Tartakova territory. CD5. So the timing of that exchange on d5 is always interesting. And you play this stuff as black, so maybe you have a
Yeah.
bit more insight.
I've had this position many times. It's white wants to take at the precise right moment. They usually take once you I think once you play b6. I think after bishop b7, I don't think taking on d5 is quite as popular, but this is a very
Hmm.
common position as well.
Now, is that because after bishop b7, if you play cd5, that maybe black can play knight d5, exchange it for a couple pieces?
Correct. Yeah, I was actually a little surprised Dane didn't play knight d5 because you want to keep the light square bishop open on b7. So I don't exactly know why takes d5 was played, but Dane was I guess Krish is playing black, so maybe Dane
Yeah,
was pleased to see takes d5.
yes. Let's see what happens. So now we have the classic uh, hanging pawns possibility if white were to play d takes c5, which Dane likes to keep the tension in these positions for as long as possible. Oh, looks like a correct enough position. And now the hanging pawns have been formed. Oh, so a pawn is going regardless. Okay, that's rude but effective. So white just stole a pawn in broad daylight. And Dane isn't content with consolidating moves like b3. He figures he'll strike while the iron is still hot. At the very least, now he's threatening to double pawns on f6, and he's also threatening to capture on c5, probably with the rook instead of the pawn. So that way he has his A and B pawns together, I'm guessing. And here, Krish decides to complicate things. Oh, all right. I cheated because I looked ahead to the next move. But if you're watching after the game has been played, and you might stop the video and think of white to play and win right here. For those who haven't figured out, queen takes e5, bang, taking advantage of the overworked bishop. Oh, I thought I was going to play rook takes c5, and then force a decision from black. But this is working as well. Yeah, some brutal technique here from Dane. Not what happened? Oh, that was sneaky. So he plays c7 to advance the pawn towards the touchdown. In the process, discovering an attack against the bishop on f6, so that after um, that poor move, he now is a rook up, and I'm fighting hard to find any compensation for it. His king might even find himself in a bit of a mating net. And I wonder if king d5 was an attempt to alert the DGT board that the game was over. Because then, yeah, I guess with a white win, both kings get put on the light squares in the center. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, that was a fairly straightforward win. I think. Yeah, I think your point about recapture on d5, that maybe black should be considering knight takes d5 to leave that open. Oh, that's not working here. It just so happens that probably isn't working unless he captures back with. So if you play knight takes here,
Yeah, you're right.
and now he either gives up a pawn or has to play that brilliant looking move.
But now we do have queen b4. So queen takes e7, queen takes c7, queen b4 check.
Okay, let's see here. So there and here and here and here and here
Yeah.
and here.
Oh, but you just bring the queen back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess knight d5 doesn't work in that specific position.
Which then brings up the question, where did black go wrong? Because usually that's an advantage to black if white delays. Let me take a look at the database just to. I think the problem is knight d7. I think that happened a bit too early. Because in the normal Tartacore, is it you're either playing 0-0 or b6 right here, right?
After what move?
So in this position, if black is trying to play for a Tartacore, he's usually playing either 0-0 or b6 in this position.
Um, yes, I don't see a problem though with knight bd7 though immediately either.
Well, I think that's what, because even in the, well, let's see.
I don't feel like the mistake could have been this early on. I think it was somewhere later.
No, well, I'm not saying that this position right here is completely lost. I'm just wondering how it was that white was able to play CD5 in a way that black was induced to
Unable
capture
to,
back.
yeah.
And that's where I think that the knight on d7 might have been the problem.
I mean, it's kind of play c5 first, and then I mean, I think after queen c2 you can get away with c5.
So here, and then queen c, the knight f3, and then
Yeah,
b6
just
and queen c2, and then c5 here.
yes, I think you can get away with it. It looks premature, but because it looks like you need to develop either a bishop or castle. But c5, I mean c5 is just like the end goal of all of the Tartakover plans. Like, I mean, I shouldn't say end goal, but it's one of the moves you play in. He did everything else, but he only got in c5 until later on move 10. So maybe he just needed to play it sooner. Because if you play it right now, um, I mean, you have to be careful about your dark squares, obviously, like a bishop g3 and a knight b5, but that won't come in
Hmm.
time. So I think you can play it, but
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. All right. But yeah, after black was induced to play e takes d5, white's position just seemed sorry, black's position seems just slightly lacking in life and here again it's tough because I guess as black you want to maintain the tension in the center. Um, for a while and maybe bishop b6. What is that intending?
bishop c6.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what bishop c6 was intending.
Yeah, when I initially seen that move, it looked a bit odd as well. I mean, if you don't want the knight jumping to b5, I mean, just play a6 probably makes a bit
a6,
more sense.
right?
Because your
Yeah,
bishop on the c file, it doesn't. It's no better than on the b file. It can only be a target, really. So
yeah, and that eventually became a major issue because now,
because of the fork, yeah.
all right, and then yeah, Dane, even before the queen takes e5 tactic, Dane was following a very aggressive strategy to clean things up. And after this, it's all over. All right. Well, that was an interesting game as well. Let's see if let's look at what other game might be completed. We have Jeremy Kyler versus Max Weigel. And let's see, where are we? Here. So, have an English opening, um, reverse Sicilian, and the fork trick occurs. So, this bishop c5 is I think it's considered the coffee house, which is kind of the reverse of the coffee house in the Sicilian with bishop c4. And one of the concerns is watching out for this fork trick. It doesn't mean that the fork trick leaves the victim of the trick in dire straits all the time, but in this specific situation, it might be pretty decent for black. Sorry, for white, because now he has better development at the moment and potential for the e4 d4 center, as happens there. And now all of white's pieces are developed. He has to figure out a plan. And so he starts with rook c1, putting pressure down the c file. Rook e8, not exactly clear. Maybe the idea is to play bishop f8. The problem,
Perhaps.
though, yeah,
Yeah, I guess it's somewhat of a threat because you want knight e4, knight e4, rook e4, but you have to consider moves like g4 intermezzo. But I think there's knight c3, so I think bishop f8 would be a threat, but White just has so much space here that if White plays carefully and doesn't succumb to any traps like that, White should just be a bit better.
Yep. And now he's planning to smoosh the bishop. Um, so Maxwell decides to create some luft for his king as well as for his bishop. Wow. Okay, that's an interesting decision. So, faced with the prospect of having his bishop entombed on h7 for a prolonged period of time, Black lashes out with bishop takes h5,
And it
getting two
makes some
pieces.
sense. It makes some sense because White wanted to play Queen b3, right? And then Black would have to even go more passive to protect f7. So, I mean, White's
Yes.
better here, but at least Black, I'm sure Maxwell reasoned to himself, well, I'm gonna get some counterplay on the king side, and at least I get to have some fun now.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I think it was a decent practical decision. I don't know. Well, I guess if he's intending to combine that move with Queen G5, which is probably what he's planning to do. But White puts a kibosh on that idea. Huh. Okay, that's a bit of a bother.
I don't know what bishop b3 was. I guess
Bishop
just a
B3?
clearance. Yeah, I guess it was a clearance because he wanted to look at
Yes.
the c7 pawn, but that wasn't apparent because he also had the knight in the way. So I guess it was kind of a
Yes.
sneaky move, and also the queen was protecting, so it worked out great. But at the time, bishop b3 looks pretty interesting.
Yes. And yeah, Bishop. So yeah, there's a question mark. Is Bishop um, E3 the way, or sorry, B3 the way, or Bishop D3? If you're trying to clear for the file for the rook, one advantage of Bishop B3 might be to keep surveillance on F7, but yeah, everything just worked out perfectly after Queen F6 because now the knight defends F4, D4, attacks G3, and there's no way to deal with all those threats and find time to defend the C pawn. So Black loses another pawn, and now he's got 3 pieces on the F7 pawn. And this could get kind of hectic. Now, at this moment here, it looks like White has overplayed his hand. Maybe he should have played F takes E5, but it just so happens that he's only losing the exchange, not a full rook, because the bishop on H4 is hanging.
But why on earth don't you play f takes e5? I mean, like
I don't know.
you,
I don't
you're
know,
you're
especially
you're crashing through on f7.
yeah, exactly, especially since one of the themes of the game was pressure against that dude, and now the rook on f1 can sing. I can see clearly now the f7 pawn's falling, and yes, I'm not sure why um, why Jeremy chose to capture on d4 with the d on e5 with the d pawn, especially understanding that this was happening. Fortunately for Jeremy, his position is so strong that the loss of exchange doesn't severely hamper his winning chances. Although I don't think he can afford any further like bad mistakes. Oh no. So Maxwell kind of um, didn't realize that his f pawn was pinned. And now Jeremy cleans things up pretty nicely. Yikes. Now the rook falls. Or maybe not. Ah, now the rook falls. I said that before, didn't I? Of course, at that moment it wasn't true, but now it is. And it is checkmate in the middle of the board. That's a nice finish. Yeah, so where do you think Maxwell lost the thread?
Well, for
So,
starters, the knight missing the knight takes e5 trick, if you want to
mhm.
call it a trick, on move 5 was not ideal. So, I mean, ever since that position, White just had like a plethora of space in the center. He had d4 in, he had e4, and Black didn't have a good way to counter strike in the center. His only option would have been to at some point play c5, and he never did that, which is kind of understandable because then d6 is kind of weak. Maybe White goes d5. It's you're not sure, but White just has a comfortable position. And not only that, his bishop got out of play real fast. So I think maybe
Mm,
bishop g4 was off on move. What was that? Move 10. So maybe fianchettoing
okay.
it or playing it on any other square than g4 because I think g4 probably only helped White.
Now, is it also possible here, excuse me, for Black to consider bishop d6? I guess c5 is happening next. So that wouldn't be great.
Yes, I think if it weren't for c5, that would be a good move.
So, um, so yeah, I suppose knight c4 would be the attempt to maintain material equality. Although I guess it just feels kind of wrong because you're getting the bishop, you're allowing the bishop to get to c4 in one move. And your own bishop is hanging, so you have to lose a tempo to deal with that. And it seems as if normally, if White has this much of a space advantage, you'd think that it was at the cost of development. But here he gets the world. He gets the space advantage to the center, and his development is better. So, yeah, so then maybe even here, after that and there, maybe he can consider bishop e6 rather than having his bishop trapped on the other side of the board.
Or, okay, something I think rather obvious that we're missing is why didn't Black play d5 when he had the one opportunity? He had like one chance. So after
Oh,
White
yes.
castled on 8, d5, and now White doesn't get
Yes.
d4.
Yes, right here, d5. Yep. And then he gets his foothold in the center. And that kind of negates White's um, advantage to some extent, because unlike White, both of Black's bishops can see sunshine in this position. This guy will have to do at least one extra move to get into circulation, and it'll probably end up being on b2, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, d5. So I think that's the one takeaway. D5 in this position. If you fall victim to this thing, you still need to remember your responsibility to get a foothold in the center, and d5 would be the answer. So, okay, let's go on to Nate Hoover versus Juan Perez, and the final position says a lot. Let's see how this developed. So it's a King's Indian defense, 4 pawns attack. That's bold. Yeah, it's not. There was a point in time, probably before either of us was on the world stage, where the 4 pawns is really topical. And then sometime, maybe by the later 70s, 80s, came to the conclusion that it was probably not that sound, and that's even before computers. But if you don't attack it, if black doesn't challenge white quickly, then bad things can happen. And I think that's what happened in this one. I mean, just look at
Yeah,
this
already I'm
is
not liking it because, like you're saying, black's not really attacking it. Look at all his pieces are so passive. If white's gonna play f4, usually you need to attack at the pawn chain more, and you need to play like c5 or f5. Not now, f5 isn't really optional because en passant, but yeah, so something already went a bit awry for black.
so this position. I don't know, but I feel so here, and then f4 was played, and e6 just seems kind of wrong. I mean, I think black has the opportunity to play bishop g4 here. If you're going to, if your setup is going to include, if your setup is going to include e6, it might make sense to get that bishop out before closing it in. And the other possibility, as you mentioned, is 0-0, and find a way to get c5 in, but find some way to punch back, because just allowing white to play without an opponent just seems wrong, especially when white is being controlled by Nate Hoover, who loves these positions where he has all this extra space.
Yeah, it's like the boxer versus the punching bag.
Yes, that's a good one. Yes, quite right. So here, black's position is not looking good, but okay, he can still try and create some kind of barricade. And yeah, now it's just yucky. h4, h5, king to d2. The major pieces find their way over to the king side. Okay, so he stops h5 from happening by playing h5 himself, but white is still allowed to keep the position open with the en passant capture and get h5 in anyway. So,
I was just I was just thinking, okay, and
mhm,
maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I was just thinking the broader concepts of chess, if you will. And
mhm,
so in this game, we had Nathan pretty much get it all, both in space and development. And it made me think, if one side focuses kind of solely on space, as Nate did with c4, d4, e4, f4, and Juan
mhm,
Carlos more focuses on development. If the side that focuses on development doesn't immediately strike back, or at least at some point strike back with White's space advantage, White will not
mhm.
only get a space advantage, they'll also retake the time advantage because they're going to push Black's pieces back, therefore rendering
Yes.
them undeveloped. And so I think it's an interesting concept that space can sometimes outweigh development, and White can have, or White or Black, but obviously mostly White can have both cards.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of also the philosophy to some extent in the same-ish, right? White is taking a move to play an extra move to play a pawn instead of developing, but he hopes if he can maintain the stability of his center, once he gets his other pieces out, then he'll now be able to use that to push black back. And yeah, that's an important point you bring up. Um, because development is useful when it's effective. And I don't know that this box is picturesque, but I don't know if it's effective. Um, and this guy is, uh, how should I say, doing his best to stop a tsunami with his bare hands. Um, yeah, this is, and finally we get c5, but it might be too little too late because white has already got all his pieces ready. And besides the knight on c3, everything is facing in the right direction. So it'll be hard to see how black survives. And white's position is so overwhelming, he can afford to sacrifice exchange to open up the h-file fully for his majors to come in.
Yeah, because it leads to a checkmate.
Yep. And black is needing to toss in the kitchen sink, and unfortunately, he ends up losing his queen and probably the game soon afterwards. So Juan decides to resign here. Yeah, this was a nice illustration of what happens if black is, especially when you're playing an opening that in its own nature is provocative. The King's Indian defense. It's provocative. You're from the get-go giving white space, and you need to make sure you're getting your trumps in before his space advantage becomes a major factor. So this was, if we go back to here, and I don't know anything about the theory of this position, really, at least nothing of usefulness anyway. After here, and f4, I'm curious to see what the most common move is for black. So 0-0 is played in 85% of the games, 84% of the games. And
There might
then
also be a case. I guess it's not showing up in the database, but I was wondering if e5 could be made to work. Just because white can't take twice, but I guess they take once and then push d5.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about e4, e5 here?
Yes, after f4, yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, do we do here, 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 or? And there's a. He probably didn't come in directly through this move order, but there's an Ivanchuk sighting versus Ivanovich.
So it's it's somewhat of an idea.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, e6 just feels kind of off. I mean, it makes some sense to try and develop a bit of a barrier using your, I guess, almost like a hedgehog type of sense, but already white has a lot of flexibility in how he's going to put his pieces on the board, and as long as you're not challenging him in the center, he can now move forward with his wing attack, as happened in the game.
So probably knight c6 on move 7 was the last straw. Maybe at that point,
yes,
you really have to play c5, and even then,
c5,
d5, e5, knight fd7. It's getting a little. Even then, it's kind of bad because then white can probably take on c5, and then. But black's still hanging on there, but
At least he has a foothold in the center, right? He has some influence in the center,
Yeah.
and that has to count for something. Um, so yes, knight c6 was probably less troll, and maybe one was mixing up systems. Again, not this four pawns attack isn't the most common thing in the world anymore. In fact, let me see where it rates in the master's database. So at this position, it falls behind knight f3, bishop e2, f3, and h3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth most popular. And that comes to 5% of all games is this f4 move here. So if black hasn't faced it before or only faces it infrequently, he may not have his system in place for how to approach it, and which is one of the things that contributes to how dangerous the system can be if you're unprepared for it.
Yeah.
Let's see, what do we have? We haven't looked at the
Srinath.
Srinath game. Srijan, sorry. And Srijan is playing black against Dansik, Sashi Kumar. Let's take a look at that. I don't know Dansik. Do you know anything about this player?
No, but I'm looking him up as we speak.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead. So it's a Karo Khan advanced variation with bishop g4, putting extra pressure against the d4 square. And now e6. And so black is trying to claim he has an improvement on the French with this setup. And at this point, he very well could be enjoying an advantage compared to the French. His bishop is out of the pawn chain. He's got his pressure against d4. White's bishop on b3 is currently miserable, but a4 can happen at some point, and that might allow it to escape, or it could eventually go to c2. Now, bishop queen d3 seems provocative, because at this moment, black could consider playing bishop takes f3, doubling the pawns, removing one of the defenders of the d4 square, and I think that might have been my automatic choices. Bishop takes, pawn takes, and maybe queen b6 as possibilities. But he played bishop b7 instead, so he wants to get his development going. And actually, his patience is rewarded because now his opponent spends a tempo to force him to play what he wants to play anyway.
I'm gonna, before I tell you the player's rating, I'll pull a new bear and ask you to guess the elo for white.
Okay. Let me see. Based on play so far, 1400.
That's a good guess. That's probably about what I would have guessed. But they're actually 1,000. They were a newer player.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she's 8, and she actually won the most recent action quad. She went 3-0, so it looks like she's improving. But yeah, she's over 1,000.
Wow. Okay, that makes it more impressive then, especially if she's just beginning. So, ouch. Srijan isn't taking any prisoners here. He wins a piece. I was actually thinking, oh, maybe Srijan was going to play knight takes d4, but that's nowhere near as forcing as just taking a bishop. Um, And now she has to worry about discoveries against the queen, amongst other things. And then there's also the pawn on d4 hanging. Wow. The harvest is here. Okay. So, and Srijan is pretty strong, right? So this is a definite rating mismatch in this one.
Yeah, I think he's around 1400. At least last I checked.
Okay. So yeah, so this is now throwing checkmate, and one way to defend it is by playing rook to b8, and then queen g6. So I think Srijan is saying, okay, well, I have enough material. I'm
Yeah, never
willing
mind. He's
to.
over 1600. I want to clarify
Huh?
that quick before I get. I said he. Never mind. He's over 1600. I want to
Okay,
clarify
I
that
thought he.
before I get
Yes,
stoned in the streets or something similar.
yes. No, I thought he was stronger than 1400 because I think I've seen he's played some pretty impressive games before, and so I thought, yeah, 1400 sounds a bit low, but okay, thanks for clarifying. So yeah, um, at this point, it's a matter of technique, as they say, and okay, that's one way of preventing the opponent from engaging in effective warfare. All the pieces go off the board except for the bishop, and now the armada of pawns starts making its way across the English Channel. And checkmate. And I think it's okay that she played on till the end, because maybe when she's going over this game later, she'll take the time to see how Srijan went about winning a one game, which is a very important skill for all of us to learn, and not just learn, but also continuously practice. Because I think most folks are going to go through phases where the hard part is getting a winning game, and then after a little bit, the hard part will be winning the winning game, right? Um, and so, yes. so, so yeah. So the more practice you can get, the better. And if you can learn from your opponent, then why not? So let's see the second in the Nate Hoover doubleheader. He's playing white against Drew Johnson. Now, out of curiosity, when he's doing these, are the are the colors synced? Is it, or is it just, or maybe it's by accident that he's. Does he ever have where he's playing white in one game and black in another game?
I think it's completely random because one game's from the Premier, one game's from the Open, so I think it just depends.
Okay. Okay. So let's see. Um, so here he's playing against Drew Johnson, and he starts off with d4 and decides not to be drawn into a Benoni or Benko um, style play by playing knight f3. So now we're in an English opening, and one that traditionally isn't considered the most threatening by white, but it's still solid, and black needs to know what they're doing. And now all of a sudden we have transposed into a Maroczy bind, the kind that could come from like the hyper accelerated dragon, or symmetrical English. There are many, there are a couple of different openings that can transpose into this position. And okay, we have a standard type position. Black is going to exchange on d4 at some moment. White has a space advantage and will try to um, expand further. Black often will try to set up a, somewhat of a dark square blockade. Maybe exchange on d4, bring the bishop to c6, play maybe a5, knight d7, knight c5. And his idea is, well, all of white's pawns are on light squares, which means the dark squares are weak. And we'll see if I can take better advantage of that. And so Drew starts his plan with a5. So he's understanding what he needs to do. And Nate decides he's going to proceed with a kingside attack. So he must be in a spicy mood today, right? Because he just conducted the 4 pawns attack in one game and is launching his pawns forward against Drew here with his king still in the center. So let's see how
Yeah.
this works out. And this is a hard one. In this position, as black, how do you approach it? Do you allow h5 to happen? Do you maybe rush to try and create play on the queen side?
I think he's a goner already. I mean,
Yeah,
I hate to
yeah.
say it, but it's it's rough. I'm just going through this game over and over again, because I already peeked at the ending, and I yeah, like you said, it was another game where Nate just yes, he wanted to play something spicy, but the position just naturally lent towards a kingside attack, and once again his opponent was a bit too slow. And in this game, it looked like it was more innocuous, but as soon as h4 comes in, and even as maybe you could argue as soon as g4 comes in, black's just they're way too slow at their own counterplay. And I was thinking maybe after knight d4, bishop d4 on move 11, maybe you have to try e5. Um, and even though d6 looks weak, I want to get in e5 and f5. So maybe e5, bishop
Okay.
e3, and then let's say maybe even knight. No, wait, that blunders a pawn at this point. Maybe knight e8 is what I was initially intending. And then
Oh,
now with
okay.
g4, you play f5.
Yeah.
If you're tracking with me, I'm playing the moves on my own board, but I know, of course, that you can't see that. But I think something like that, and to me, this looks like black is doing fine again, or at least hanging in there for sure.
At least getting something going, because the way the game went, white again got everything he wanted out of it on the white side of the King's Indian. He's got a space advantage. He's the center is stable, and so he can start his play on either wing. And as you said, organically, it just seemed like the this looks like it reminds me of uh, um, a Yugoslav attack gone really, really bad for black. The Yugoslav attack in the Sicilian Dragon, where white is going for e4, f3, and then eventually go for g4, h4, h5. The kind of attack that uh, Fisher famously remarked about getting the dragon down to a science, the sack mate. That was this system when it's played against the regular dragon. And so with a5, somehow I don't know where he went wrong in the opening, because this white's life should not be this easy.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the database here. So queen d2, not the most common move, but common enough, 4%. The overwhelming choice is 0-0. But queen d2 does have a major thing going for it, that if black is careless, then white hasn't wasted a tempo moving his rook from h1 to f1. So then bishop d7 happens. And we actually have some strong players in this position, including Lu Shangli and Daniel Friedman. So it's not, this position looks familiar to me. And that's why I was wondering, how did White get such a great attack so quickly? F3 has been seen before. Knight d4 is correct. Again, we have very powerful players here. Bu Zhangyi, the Chinese grandmaster, who at some point in time was the youngest grandmaster in the world. Bishop takes d4 and a5. That's a thing. So I know that often enough in these positions, as I mentioned earlier, Black's plan includes bishop c6 and then knight d7, offering exchange of bishops, and then he's going to play a5 and knight c5 and create a bit of a barricade on the dark squares, right? So in this position, maybe Drew mixed up ideas or didn't realize the difference in timing by playing a5 right away. And again, most commonly, White is castling kingside here, right? And the fact that he went immediately for g4 might have taken Black unawares, because this is now a completely different position, and it has more in common with the dragon, the straight up dragon, than the Maroczy bind position. And so here maybe Black again needs to consider bishop c6 or bishop e6, and maybe bishop c6 still, with the idea of not moving any pawns on the king side until he has to, and then rerouting the knight and seeing if that's enough to, so say, for example, if h4, then maybe knight d7 here, or even I guess a4 is even possible too, threatening this and creating some sort of counterplay. Because this move, as opposed to played in the game, after and maybe e5 was the last straw. Because after e5, Black no longer can easily exchange off the dark squares in a way that favors him. And even if White didn't have an attack here, and he just went back and just played normal chess after this, instead of the attack on the king side, this guy can't claim to have a good life.
No.
And he's created a weakness on d6. So that even if White didn't have an automatic attack, say it was a normal position where he had castled kingside, Black's position would be sad. But with his rook still on h1, now it's just, how should I say, silence of the lamps coming. So h5 occurs, and which I think is okay, a decent attempt to try and make something happen, but White is going to come crashing through. And I think bishop g5 deserves some mention, because that forces one of the files to get open rather than allowing the knight capture back on h5. So here, and on move 18, White finally decides he can castle. So it's knight d5.
And Black wishes his king was back on e8.
Yes. Exactly. Ouch. Nice. So this is a nice checkmating sequence. So he plays bishop takes to induce the bishop to leave the defense of the h6 square. And in fact, there is no way to prevent queen h6, regardless of what black plays here. I guess he could. He can't even. He doesn't even have a choice of playing bishop h6 to give up the checkmate in the style because the bishop's pinned against the king. So yeah. So for Drew, I think understanding the concepts behind your opening and when a move like queen d2 happens, let's go back here. When your opponent has the opportunity to castle and doesn't, you need to smell a rat. I think that's one other takeaway from this game. You need to understand it. If he has the opportunity to castle and doesn't castle, think about why he might not be casting. Oh, is he planning to do a pawn storm and leave his rook on h1? So anyway, let's go on to the next game. Let's see here. We've got Connor's made a comeback to Thursday Nighter. Let's see. Playing against Eddie, and Eddie starts with he allows the Nimzo classical variation 5, and seems like a normal enough position here. I believe all of this is known theory. That is an interesting move. And I don't know if this is theory or not. I think this is new here.
Because in that position, it kind of looked like white might win a pawn, but I don't know. I'm not familiar with theory here, so.
Yeah, I'm not exactly familiar with theory here either. I think this d4 idea looks very, very aggressive, and after knight here, the rhythm of the position just feels nice for black in a way. Yeah, if he plays f3 now, the upshot of that is that the king can't castle easily. So this bishop g4, I don't know if this is Connor's home cooking, but he's managed to grab the initiative in this position. I mean, there still is the issue of maybe a knight d5 at some moment after bishop takes f6. But he doesn't go for that.
And if we step back just a couple moves, I was wondering why Eddie didn't go f3. And it must be, the only reason I can deduce is what you mentioned about not being able to castle, because I think f3 wins the h7 pawn. But if you go for that, so let's say f3, bishop h5, bishop f6, queen f6, bishop h7, white's up a pawn, but now black can't castle. I mean, white can't castle, and our king obviously can't castle queenside either because our rook has moved. So, but I'm a little surprised that he didn't go for this, because it looks like we're gonna get some sort of piece on, like on d5 or e4. So this looks playable too for white.
I agree. And maybe worst case scenario. Well, the one problem with 95 is it does. You have to be careful that G6 isn't trapping the bishop. So maybe we have to return with the bishop to E4 here. Um,
How much time did Eddie spend on not playing F? He played
so he played here and he spent 2 minutes
2 minutes.
on Rook D2.
That's not a lot for Eddie.
No,
Not a lot for
and it's
anyone, but
surprising.
especially Eddie.
Yeah, it's surprising, as you said. It does seem a bit surprising that he didn't take the opportunity to. Well, maybe I don't know if this is working though. Maybe this first. But that doesn't seem. That doesn't seem.
I don't think it changes the fact that we win a pawn. It changes the structure.
Well, yeah. If he plays here, then the pawn loss might. There might be some.
Hmm.
Let's see what's going on here.
I do like this more for black. So yeah, maybe black takes on c3 first and then moves the light squared bishop.
Then moves light square bishop. Probably I don't know. Here.
Yeah. And then if
And
bishop f6, we
he
throw in
tries
queen
for
e3.
this. We go here.
Yeah, so do we throw in
No.
queen e3?
Yeah. Now the question here is, if you castle, then G6, but then there's G4. So maybe we don't. Maybe with that in mind, we don't put the bishop on H5. Maybe here we take. Well, if you take the bishop to D7, it'll be hanging. If you take it to C8, it's not doing great things for black's development. Is E4 working here? Just blast things open while the king is still stuck in the center?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. What does white do? Yeah.
This is far away from the game, but it does seem like this would be a logical continuation on
No,
some
but
level.
yeah, I think this is helpful because this is why I'm now that I see it, now that you pointed out, I think this is why Eddie didn't play f3 because e4 does cause white a lot of problems.
Wow, so Connor his conception here, I think, is very nice. And he continues to play aggressively. And Eddie now, so Eddie's finished his development, but I don't think there's too much argument with the idea that black's position is a bit more fun to play.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly equal position. Black has the bishop pair, but it's not abundantly clear that the bishop pair is even better in this case because white's knight is decent on c3. And I always like
Yes.
when one side has the smaller pawn majority to push. So Eddie has the 3-on-2 on the queen side. So I might give a slight preference to Eddie, but it's minor, especially at this level.
That seems like a fair assessment. That maybe I'm overestimating black's potential here, and White has the almost no-brainer plan of a majority attack on the queen side. Okay, king h1. He wants to play f3 maybe?
At long last.
Uh-oh. Connor just keeps finding ways to strengthen his position.
And if black gets their bishop on d5, that's going to be bad news.
Yeah. I mean, right now, did he have to give up the pawn? Oh, the pawn on e5 will be hanging. Okay. So it's actually defended tactically. The pawn on on b4 is defended tactically. But black can double rooks. And I don't know. I still I think black's position might be a bit easier to play, but white should be able to consolidate. I mean, his situation would be easier if he didn't have so little time left. 41 seconds on the clock seems like a difficult time if you ask me.
And
Okay,
we're only
let's
on
take a
move
look.
25, so that means that Eddie has spent, what's the math on that? So 90 minutes and 25 moves. That's at least
More than 3
3 minutes,
minutes.
more than 3 minutes a move, which,
Yeah.
Eddie's a friend of the castle, obviously. We can give him a soft rebuke. So Eddie, once you see
Yes.
the VOD, you need to play a bit faster, because 40 seconds, if you're playing a top level tournament, you like even the candidates that's going on right now, there's no increment up until move 40. So you'd have to
Oh
play
yeah.
15 moves in 41 seconds. But Eddie's probably thinking, well, if I was in the candidates, who cares?
Yeah. Now let's take a look. There's I don't know if this is a real game or not. Let me see the first few moves. Okay, this is likely a real game. Jacob Pikus versus David Bocek, and so it's an English opening, and at least for the time being, Jacob is consistently playing c4 g3 on moves 1 and 2. Oh, yeah, this is an aggressive approach by black. It's a sort of King's Indian Dutch hybrid system. Aggressive players will often play against the Sicilian. So I suppose it has maybe like a Grand Prix feel, a reverse Grand Prix feel. So both sides have gotten set up stall in the center to some extent. White slightly ahead in development. So it seems as if black is playing, so if white is playing bishop g5, it suggests maybe he wants to exchange off that bishop. Because I guess bishop e3 was also a way of developing. But then,
Yeah,
okay, that might run into f4, huh?
I was just saying, yeah, I assume so.
Yeah, I mean, but maybe it runs into f4 at some inconvenient moment, and that's why he goes bishop g5 instead to exchange off. And okay, this exchange of bishop g5 for knight on f6 often will occur in these kind of positions when the d5 square is available. In this case, that's not happening. However, white has a way of potentially exposing the d6 pawn, and that's by playing this d4 advance, which wouldn't be possible with the knight still on f6, because then it would just lose the pawn. So maybe this was probably Jacob's idea back here, was I want to expand in the center, and the best way to do that, uh, well, is remove some of black's pressure against e4.
Makes sense.
So now I have this position, and at this point, it seems that's funny. So after all of that, you get here, and black has this double attack against the knight on d4, as well as the pawn on b2. And so white has to give up something. And so he goes this way. And
I kind of liked bishop e6 for black, instead of bishop c3.
yes, yeah, I'm not terribly enthused with bishop c3. I don't see. Part of the problem with this, though, is figuring out what you're doing here. I suppose
Bishop
this can
c
happen.
bishop c4,
Right,
yeah. And
that can happen.
I just felt like knight d e2 for white was passive. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's not all bad because you are putting pressure on d6, but knight f5 surely has to be looked at, and from his time usage,
Yeah, how much time did they spend here? So he played knight back. Is that 21 minutes?
yeah. So he definitely spent enough time.
Yes. Let's look at knight f5. So what would be the follow-up?
It looks somewhat forced, so I guess we should just first of all calculate the most obvious line.
Okay, so let's say we do that. Now the problem here, or a problem here, this guy's hanging, and if they move away, then queen takes a1 as a possibility.
Yes, yeah, queen b2.
Oh, I think you're frozen.
Am I frozen?
You were frozen for some seconds there.
Okay.
So yes, after knight, this position is not trivial. After this, how exactly is white saving this?
I hmm. Yeah, he probably isn't.
So yeah, somehow this plan kind of boomeranged on Jacob. Okay, that's not real. That is not real. Queen b5 here. This isn't a real move. Okay, let's see if there is another copy of this game somewhere, because that move just doesn't seem authentic.
Yeah, unfortunately, I
Uh,
don't see another copy.
yeah, I don't see another copy either. Let's see here, here.
Yeah, and the moves that follow aren't any Any
Any
more
better?
sensible?
So, well, let's see. Well, you know what? Let's forget that the identity of the players matters, and just focus on the fact that these moves were played probably. Let's see this game here. It says it's Roger Hale versus Kevin Landman, but we don't know who the actual players are. So let's see how this develops. So you have a Queen's Gambit declined, early exchange variation, E3, um, which, so sometimes I'll make the mistake, and it's not okay, it's not really a mistake, but I don't think it's the most accurate move of playing Queen C2 here, right? It's not necessary at this point, and the reason to play Queen C2 would be, okay, I want to prevent his bishop from developing, but it just so happens that in this position, bishop f5 isn't a thing. Because you can play here and then double attack these, and all of a sudden black is losing material for very little compensation. I mean, yeah, I guess the bishop pair, but that's probably not going to count. White is going to be able to often will maintain a solid enough center that the bishops won't become hyperactive. So e3 is just fine. And now bishop d3. And so here, bishop f5 is not a thing. And knight e4, which seems, it works tactically. But it has this feel of being a bit early, but then, yeah, it is
Whoa.
early.
Well, yeah, if you play knight e4, you have to play knight c3.
Yes, so let's see how that sequence of desperados might work. Oh no, bang.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Nice, nice. Because if king h8 or king h7, there's queen h5, and white not only saves their
Yep,
queen, they're not checkmate black. Yep.
yep. And the queen on d8 is still in danger. So yeah, this seemed early, and yeah, I guess the player on the white side proved it was too early to play knight e4. I guess this is an argument for playing c6 before launching into e4. Oh wow, that's
No,
bad.
okay. No, this can't be real.
Um, yeah, the identity of the players might be a bit wrong.
We need Eddie's game to finish up because usually Eddie will come into chat and tell us what's right,
What's
what's
what?
wrong, who played what. Yeah, and then he'll even sometimes notify Nate to fix it. But yeah, I think one of two is possible. Either this wasn't a game at all, or it was a game, but it definitely wasn't Kevin Landman because I think there's a very, very low chance he blundered a piece in 6 moves.
Yes, there's like zero chance. He's way too strong, way too experienced. Um, yeah, now it's sort of routine, but this is a nice moment. This b4, whoever's playing white wants to reduce their workload in the endgame. And part of that is decreasing the opponent's ability for counterplay. And by playing b4, locking the king out, the black king out, now white can get his king into the game at leisure, not worrying about black's black the black king meddling in his affairs. And there's the added benefit that bishop b7, he's fixed the a6 and b5 pawns, and now the bishop on the bishop on g2 can eventually go to b7 and maybe start munching. And that's what happens. So one pawn is gone, and now the black king has to say hello to his counterpart. Oh, okay, that's sufficient. And now it's a trivial king and pawn ending. So yes, I doubt that the labels for the players is correct in that one. We have Arun Prithvi versus Judson Girton. And again, these are alleged identities until we get some confirmation from somebody on site. So we have another King's Indian today.
Yep. The game looks normal enough. Sorry to interrupt, but it looks like this is a genuine game.
Yes.
However, I would have assumed I think this is a genuine game. I just think the colors are reversed. I made a quick scroll through the game, and not to be presumptuous, but I think Judson is white. If I had to make a guess, so maybe we should just go forward with that assumption.
Yes. I haven't looked through the game, but I just from the opening, I suspect Judson is playing the white pieces here. Okay, so we actually have an interesting King's Indian battle here. White didn't play the most aggressive system, which has a benefit that if black knows what they're doing, white hasn't compromised his position yet. And now white is able to gain space in the center in a way that he still has control over the d4 square. Whoa, that was a rapid transformation. What happened there? Okay, somebody entered. Okay, I guess somebody's in the process of editing the games. So the game we were looking at before has been relegated to a variation. And the actual game might be this one now. Okay. And yes, this...
We've been hacked.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, let's go back a bit here. So we have this bishop d3 isn't the most common visitor, but it's a valid enough system. White is defending his e4 pawn with the bishop and hopes he can develop his bishop on the long diagonal without utilizing a weakening fianchetto. So bishop f3, and one of his goals in life is to make black's queenside development at least a little bit inconvenient. Knight c3 could also be considered here, because we're coming up. So at this moment here, we have an IQP position for white, and one of the things that comes of having an IQP position is the owner of the IQP usually wants to keep their pieces on the most active squares possible. And I believe knight c3 is definitely is more active than d2. Okay, so now black has blockaded the d4 pawn. So it's really important as a defender of the against the IQP to have firm control over the square right in front of the IQP. Uh-oh. What am I missing? Okay, this seems to be the live position or the most current position of whoever is entering the moves. Let's go somewhere else. Let's see, because now I'm getting vertigo, trying to keep track of what position is real versus not. This one here features Neinica versus Shatvat, and this could be
Yeah,
okay.
this is the correct game, it looks like.
Yes. So this is Neinica playing white versus Shatvat Vijay Vijay is it
Or
Vijayaraj or Vijayaraj? That I'm not sure. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
I'm not sure as
I'm
well.
thinking Vijay. I'm thinking Vijayaraj, but um,
Actually, as I'm scrolling through this, it
mhm.
looks like both the main line and the sublines are games we've already seen.
Oh, well, we didn't finish this one. I don't think. Right. This is one that we thought might have been the Judson game, and then we dropped off somewhere. I think we dropped off before we got here because it got switched to something else, and we never got to this. We got to D5 and then Bishop B7, and then we got switched off to the French game instead. So here we have a difference where knight is coming into G5 on its way to E6, and already black can't escape losing an exchange, maybe? Well, he can. He can go instead of E8, um, Queen C8 seems to be the way not to lose. Well, Queen C8 is one way. Rook E8 is another way, with the idea after Rook E8 of opening that square for the knight to go to. So say Rook E8 here, and if this, then here, and now you can try something like knight back, knight here to start untangling your position. So Queen E8 allows knight in a way that he's going to lose the exchange after knight C7. All right, so now black is an exchange down, and white still has the positional pluses of their position. So here, black tries to strike out with e5, creating a strong pawn center, but might have forgotten that en passant is a possibility. And this is um, worse yet because there's nothing defending the e6 square, and now white is going to win even more material. Wait a second, that's even more than I thought. So after this, one pawn and a piece, and now two pieces, and the bishop still gets out alive, or at least at the worst might need to exchange itself for a knight coming to c6. All right, this seems like a bit of a mismatch now. Was that just for fun?
Probably.
I think it was just for fun. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I don't know.
I
Did
think
he
that's all the
notice any
game.
new games? Yeah, I think that's all the games. It could probably
It
hold
was
shock
just
you.
there's one game we haven't finished, and that was the Connor and Eddie game.
Oh yeah. Is it done now? Yes, it is
They
done.
oh it did? Oh yeah, it's
It
done.
is done. And yeah, it didn't end well for Eddie. I mean, his position was looking very difficult when we left it. So we were here, and then Black attacks E4, but that's not really an attack because they lose the E5 pawn if you were to take. As suspected, Black doubled on the D file. White defends his B4 pawn. And now the queen comes back to G5. And what that is doing is strengthening the pin against the bishop on D3. Since it's now putting extra pressure on this guy. And of course, these two are X-ray pressurizing the rook on D2. So Eddie, with 36 seconds left on his clock, tries to escape the pin by playing rook E2, but there's a back rank issue, and Connor doesn't miss things like that. Bang. And queen can't capture because of here. Okay, I'm just kidding. So rook there, and the queen comes back. And now bishop there, and Connor will not be denied. White has given up another pawn. Rook takes f3 with the point that if pawn takes, bishop takes. So he loses that pawn, and he tries queen attacking the bishop, but then that loses to rook d3 with the idea that the queen still can't leave the back rank. So then queen e1, and now bishop b3, threatening rook d1. And yeah, once Connor's playing the opening, I felt was logical, energetic, and he had equalized really quickly. Again, I don't know the theory of it, but it just felt like he got to a really nice position in a logical and sort of easy manner. It wasn't easy, it just looked easy. So, okay, that's the last game for the night, I believe. Any other announcements?
Just the usual. So people can make sure to check out the Discord. We have just some chats going on there, just mainly about the candidates, but it'd be nice to kind of grow that a bit. And then our sponsorships are, as always, Chess Goals and Webeccentric, and you can use the respective coupon codes for nice discounts there. And then, like I said, this Saturday, make sure to check out the castle for some chess, and also if you want to spectate the Chess Castle Championship playoffs. And I believe next week, if I'm not mistaken, it will be you and New Bear, or is it me and New Bear?
I think it's you and New Bear.
Okay, I
Yeah, I
knew
think it's you and New Bear.
like the other day, and then I forgot, but I have it in my archive. So, but make sure
Okay.
to tune in for next week, guys, and we'll see you.